Welcome back. New York Congressman Michael Grimm says he's resigning after pleading guilty to federal tax evasion charges. Today, House Speaker John Boehner called Grimm's decision to step down honorable, saying that Grimm made the decision with the best interests of his constituents in the House in mind. Grimm vowed to stay in Congress for as long as he could after pleading guilty last week. Grimm released a statement saying, quote, "After much thought and prayer, I have made the very difficult decision to step down from Congress effective February 5th, 2015. This decision is made with a heavy heart as I have enjoyed a very special relationship and closeness with my constituents, whom I care about deeply." As for Grimm's replacement, there will be a special election called by Governor Cuomo, and the parties will pick their nominees, no primaries. Staten Island District Attorney Dan Donovan, who ran the grand jury in the Eric Garner case, is being called the clear frontrunner to take over for Grimm's job. Some of the other Republican contenders for Grimm's seat include Assemblywoman Nicole Maliotakis, who represents the 64th District, State Senator Andrew Lanza, and former Republican Congressman Vito Fossella, who knows a thing or two about, well, leaving that seat in Congress and amid scandal. Assemblyman Michael Cusick is among the Democratic contenders, who also consist of former Congressman Michael McMahon and Dominic Recchia, who probably not so much because he was trounced by Grimm in last month's election. And that'll be January 5th will be the resignation date that takes effect. All right, let me start with Grimm, then we'll get on to the special in a second. But I can't escape the thought that Michael Grimm basically perpetrated a fraud against voters in the 11th Congressional District. He spent all summer saying, I'm innocent of this, I'm innocent of them, I'm innocent. Then he pleads guilty in what appears to be just a bargaining chip for sentencing. And Assemblyman, well, you want to talk me down off the ledge? Or?
No, you can stay on the ledge, but just don't jump. What I see this is a political ploy to put a particular person, I don't know who that particular person is, in office. As was stated, there's no primary. The parties will nominate someone. So it's now the favorite son or daughter of each party will be the nominee, and that will be the race. But there's one caveat here, and that's the governor has to call a special. He may not call a special. That seat may be empty for 2 years, as were seats in the Assembly and the Senate vacant for 2 years because the governor, because he says he's a good government kind of guy, doesn't want the parties to control who the nominee is. So that being the case, he just may never call a special, and that seat just remains empty.
Jonathan, the seat's essentially a walkover, or most people would think it's a walkover for whoever the Republican nominee happens to be. A, who do you think it's going to be? And B, can the governor really wait 2 years to call a special election?
I don't think the governor can. It's a congressional race, and frankly, if it is going to go Republican, and let's assume that it will, this is going to be the only majority member of that, of the congressional delegation in the city of New York. So it's important. They do. Governors and mayors do go to this person to try to get things done in the House of Representatives. I'm being told from everybody I'm talking to on Staten Island that District Attorney Dan Donovan is lining up everybody's support. He will be the Republican nominee.
If it's Dan Donovan who's the Republican nominee, we just talked in the last segment about trying to cool temperatures in New York City. Given Donovan's role essentially running the grand jury in the Eric Garner case, how does this do anything but inflame tensions in the city again? Well, and should the Republican Party of Staten Island, or I guess Staten Island, Brooklyn, sure, keep that in mind and maybe look for somebody else?
Well, I think the issues are mutually exclusive. If he's qualified to do so and he did nothing wrong in the grand jury, then he can be a qualified candidate. I'm going to digress for a second because since it's somebody from my party, I think it's outrageous that you have an individual who pleads guilty to a federal felony and then has to sit down and decide whether or not he's going to leave office. That is a disgrace. He should have left instantly. And for those members of my party, at least, we are offended by his actions. So let me speak in that. Insofar as who the candidate should be, and I'm agreeing with you, I think the governor can, if he chooses to, hold off on this, but I think the political winds are such that he really can't afford to hold off. He's going to have to call a special election. Is that the appropriate choice, given what's just happened with the Garner grand jury? I don't know. It may inflame the city again. There are other qualified candidates out there. I have some experience in Republican primaries, as we know recently. Not always, pleasant ones, but
sorry to bring that up.
Yeah, that's quite all right. It's a contest. Someone wins, someone loses. But the fact is, I think once again, as we would like to see done, you pick the best qualified candidate. You go to the people. You allow the people to make a choice. Now, I do think it's probably, I don't want to say a shoo-in for a Republican, but it's a foregone conclusion. It's pretty much a Republican seat. But Dan Donovan could be a wild card in that.
He could because of the Garner situation. Absolutely. I mean, this is the same Republican Party though that had Grimm, who got indicted, Vito Fossella, who left in disgrace. You know, Guy Molinari and his daughter both resigned to do other things in the middle of their terms. So I mean, you know, the Staten Island Republican Party hasn't had the greatest success as of late with respect to picking candidates. Sure, many of these candidates have won, and a lot of that might be due to gerrymandering at this particular district, which is a Republican district. Only one Democrat has ever had it in 34 years. You know, Donovan is a good pick. He's a safe pick, very respected on all, you know, across the spectrum. But why now? I mean, he was pretty quiet and behind the scenes with respect to Garner. Him coming out now and being a candidate, this will be the only congressional race in the country at its time. This is the only thing that the Democrats are going to be able to really hammer and hit him on. And I think that the national media now will finally be able to ask him and go to him face to face on this Garner issue. Why didn't he try him for you know, other ways? I mean, you know.
And Assemblyman, won't that lead people to think that his approach in the Garner case, and we still don't know a lot of the details or what was presented to the grand jury, right? That it was done more out of personal political motivation than necessarily a search for justice? I'm not saying that's the way it happened, but that's certainly going to open up that can of worms.
I really can't speak to that, but first of all, there wasn't a gerrymandered district. That district was all of Staten Island and whatever was left over to fill in the 700 and some thousand people.
Well,
Staten Island happens
they could have cut in some of Coney Island if they wanted to make it more democratic and all. I mean, yeah.
Well, it's actually one of the better districted seats geographically. I mean, if you think about it, it's one of the few that makes sense.
It has to be the entire island.
It doesn't have to be. It could have been split up into 4 pieces. But the Republican candidate, if it is Donovan, I don't believe will be affected in that district.
I don't think so either.
So, yeah, well, it may inflame people that live in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, but they're not voting. The people that are voting live on Staten Island. They're the same people that voted for the person they knew was going to jail.
Overwhelmingly.
Overwhelmingly.
Yeah,
so
13
they're
points.
going to support the Republican candidate, as far as I'm concerned, and I don't care how much you want to beat him up on the handling of the Garner case. As the district attorney, I'm pretty sure he can defend himself.
I'm sure he can.
As to what his actions were. Like you said, we don't know all of the details, and we probably will never know the details. The grand jury spoke. He walks away from it and says the grand jury did their thing. They said no indictment. I'm out of it. Done. So I don't think that that particular incident is going to hurt him in a congressional race there.
And don't think you're going to get a Democrat that might disagree with the whole Garner grand jury result. I mean, many of the Democrats that are putting their hat in the ring might also side with the DA on how it went.
Because it's Staten Island.
That's a
Yeah,
good point.
because it's Staten Island.
It's Staten Island.
The
All
two
right.
issues are mutually exclusive, I think.
All right, up next, our Scandal Fest on RFL continues. This time, it's State Assembly Speaker Shelley Silver facing more problems. Feds launching an apparent investigation into Silver's additional income outside of Albany. Could this pave the way for bigger problems? And what does this say about Albany? We'll be back with that next.